Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to another fine Wednesday morning. Welcome to another coffee break chat. I'm your host, James Jackson, he, they pronouns, executive producer, Light Thief Productions. Today we're joined by Kelci, artistic director of Sewer Rats Productions. We're going to dive into their new show, Perils of the Flowerbed, and we've got local news about Trans Day of Visibility, national news about our state senators and their support, or lack thereof, of the William Way Center, and some disturbing national trends around DEI. And we're also going to discuss the international ramifications of Netflix opening a mega studio in New Jersey. All that and more today, but first, go get your coffee if you haven't yet, because I'm sure I'm not the only one feeling that loss of an hour of sleep that we didn't get this weekend thanks to daylight savings time. If you haven't reset your clocks yet, you're probably part of Gen X, and your clocks blink 12 all the time. Find somebody in my generation, the Xennials or Millennials or Gen Y and Gen Z, if you want to call them that. We know how to do those things because we spent a lot of time with technology. I wanted to go off on a little bit of a rant about daylight savings time. I have a problem with daylight savings time. I know why daylight saving. All right, let me get this straight. I don't know why daylight savings time exists. Nobody does. Because the exact reasons for daylight savings time have kind of been lost to history. We have a lot of people who theorize they know why daylight savings time exists. Power saving, actually saving daylight so that farmers could get up earlier. But when you look into all of these, claims about why daylight savings time exists, you find that they're all apocryphal, and not necessarily accurate to the reasons that daylight savings time was established. It was established. And I'm often very confused by this daylight savings time thing. Anyway, I'm gonna bring Kelci up on screen. Welcome, Kelci. Please introduce yourself, your pronouns, and what it is you do.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Kelci Schlierf. My pronouns are she, her, and I am the artistic director of Sewer Rats Productions.
Awesome. What is your relationship with daylight savings time?
It is just simply an annoyance, if you ask me. I've always believed the farmer theory that it's for farmers, whatever. But as somebody who has worked different shifts and different has had, non-traditional jobs, there's nothing worse than when we fall back and you're working an overnight shift and you watch it go from like 2 in the morning to like 1 in the morning again, or whatever
Right.
happens.
Yeah.
Couldn't tell you. It's exhausting for everyone, and I don't think it benefits anybody.
I know why we set our time zones the way we did, like, like Greenwich Mean Time, and then New York, and it all has to do with early navigation and lines of latitude and longitude. Lines of longitude are the north-south ones, so you can tell your place in the world just by knowing what time it is in Greenwich, and then figuring out what time noon is where you are. But I think we're past that now. I think, like by this point in modern history, like New York and Philadelphia and DC are all kind of like a half hour off of what the longitude would make really good time, which is, I think, why we have daylight savings time. Because if you look back on it, like farmers don't care. They just get up when the cows get up. And factory workers don't do better. But anyway, the whole thing about daylight savings time, I think we should just pick a point half an hour in between. There's a lot of time zones in the world that are a half hour between. And there's a lot of weird time zones too, like, like that have nothing to do with their latitude and longitude. There's like in near the the international date line, which is exactly opposite Greenwich Mean Time, Greenwich, England. It's near the international date line. There's actually a couple of islands that are separated by like a full day because they're on opposite sides of the actual international date line, but their governments and the reason why they work, like the governments that they work with most frequently are on in other time zones. So it's easier to set their time zone to what the government that they work with most frequently is. And
There.
so anyway, but yeah, I think let's just pick a half an hour point, halfway between daylight savings time and standard time, and let's switch to that. Anyway, there's a survey, there's a poll in this on all of our outlets. Um, Let me see if this poll is actually published. Let's see how that works. Yes, I think the poll is up. But anyway, yes, I'm activating it now. There we go. So there's a poll on our Facebook channel that's live now. There's a poll on our YouTube and Twitter. And so let me know what you guys think about daylight savings time. Feel free to, if you're watching this later, participate in any of the polls. They'll be up for a while. Let's transition roughly as daylight savings time does to Perils of the Flowerbed. Can you tell me a bit about Perils of Flowerbed? Just pretend I don't know anything about it. Why should an audience member come to your stage reading of Perils of Flowerbed?
Absolutely. So Perils of the Flowerbed is a new play, relatively new, and it's about a young girl named Greta who comes to work for the Baron and Baroness of a unspecified country, and basically she becomes entrapped in this sort of interesting psychological game between the Baron and Baroness, who are twins and have this really interesting supernatural connection. And it's an exploration of gender and sexuality and feminine rage and all these different just really interesting concepts, and it's told in this sort of supernatural kind of way, and it's really fabulous. It's really incredible. We have the best cast, Katrina Hall, Mark Johnson, and Sarah Billings. They are absolutely phenomenal. And this is going to be sort of a stylized staged reading. So there will be, there's going to be blocking and movements and these sort of tableaus. And we have some really fabulous costuming, and it's going to be absolutely excellent. And it is one night only, on April 6th. That's a Saturday. It's at 7:30, and it is pay what you can, pay what you decide. So, we don't want finances to be a barrier. We just want to share our art with the world. So come check it out.
Awesome. Where is that?
Yeah, it's taking place at the Meeting House Theater at the Community Education Center, at 3400 Lancaster, in University City. So it's very accessible. You can get there on the L, and it's going to be cool.
Awesome. So you mentioned themes that are relevant to modern day. Can you I mean, you know, you're also mentioning things that aren't like modern day. The being hired by a baron and baroness, not necessarily relatable. How does this all tie together? How do we get from indentured servitude to themes of um I don't know, LGBTQ positivity, what have you?
Yeah, there is a really fascinating sort of love triangle between the three characters, and there's also um, it's a really interesting. I know I keep saying that word. It's a really interesting sort of um, exploration of sexuality, in that this girl is sort of caught between these two people, and sort of hasn't explored these emotions that she's feeling before, and really hasn't ever been in this sort of position. She's lived this very sheltered life, with her mother and her twin brother. So it's a sort of exploration of sort of discovery and learning, and having the opportunity to kind of connect with new people, and having to sort of explore complicated emotions and complicated feelings of desire that this character has never before experienced.
And also, I'm not an expert on Perils of the Flowerbed, so excuse me if I misinterpret this, but I understand that a lot of it has to do with kind of the juxtaposition of the mundane and the like grotesque. The inhabitants of this script are in a castle, but it's kind of not a castle in the real world. It's kind of disembodied or disconnected from reality in that, like, there's like monsters.
Correct. Yeah. And there's an enchanted garden, and there's this really interesting discussion of these various herbs and flowers and things, and their what they represent and what they can do to a person. And this flower is safe to eat, but this one is not. This one's beautiful, but don't touch it. So it's sort of an interesting, just sort of, yeah, it is that juxtaposition of the mundane and of the that and the mystical and the supernatural.
Cool. Yeah, I often have been known. In fact, if somebody, probably most people don't have never looked this deep into my person. But anyway, like one of my old websites described, like, I'm a visual person, so I often am looking for beauty even in what other people find grotesque, and I think that there's a way to do that. I think that the script perhaps talks about that. Um, I wanted to talk a little bit about the city canceling the Trans Day of Visibility events. Um, the city apparently will still fly the transgender pride flag at City Hall, but the Office of LGBT Affairs Executive Director Selena Morrison McLean um, announced that the event announced on the official website, while we regret to inform you that we will not be hosting the event this year, we want to assure you of our continued commitment to the importance of Trans Day of Visibility and the elevation of transgender voices. Um, I don't know. I don't know necessarily why you got into theater, but like me personally, I got into theater because I found it a good way to elevate voices and experiences of people who don't necessarily always have the opportunity to express those things. Um,
100%.
I mean, I think also, the play Perils of the Flowerbed speaks to those kinds of experiences as well. What do you how do you think that this should be being handled this way? Do you put value in that statement, like, or I mean, personally, I think that the statement is it kind of counters itself, but I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm curious, what was any reason cited for why they've canceled the event, or was it just
No.
this is the only statement we've received?
Yeah.
So I agree, it is sort of counterintuitive to say, oh, we believe in this issue and we support people, but here's the one thing that we do as an initiative to support these people and we're canceling it. It just seems just not to make sense at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I all of the platforms that I've built, I try to, raise voices that aren't often, often don't have an amount of voice, and that seems to, I don't know, it seems to be problematic in this particular case. Yeah, there's nothing in the reporting done by other folks. I obviously haven't been able to get or seek comment from this office in regards to why they canceled the event. But there it's a disturbing trend for our local government, as well as nationally and internationally. It seems like all these efforts that we've had in the last 20 years or so to increase the visibility and voice of people who don't have visibility and voice are being rapidly rolled back right at the moment. I went, yeah, did you have something?
No, just I emphatically agree.
I, I don't quite understand it myself. I wanted to rant a little bit here. And I apologize for, like kind of being off on a tangent this morning, and like, but like I said, before the show, and I've said on other shows, jump in anytime. Um, uh, so on Tuesday, city council. I want to get off a little bit of a rant here. City council is getting a little spicy. It has been an interesting new city council. We have elected people who don't agree with each other. Probably good. I mean, at least there's representation of all kinds of voices on city council right now. The representation seems to be split between progressives and neolib Democrats. That's the best way I can describe it. If you're not immersed in political things or the body politic, or you don't really think about politics that much, first of all, I'm not sure why you'd be watching this show. I talk about politics all the time. But let's talk about what the difference between a neolib and a progressive is through the examples of what's going on. Um, City council member, uh, Lozada, um, put forth a bill, a city council bill, last near the beginning of the year, um, asking the city to codify the collection of certain data, and this data has everything to do with homelessness and drug treatment. So the data that the city council member wanted to codify the collection of was numbers and identities of people who are experiencing homelessness, where they're experiencing homelessness, and numbers and identities and of people being revived with Narcan, and
Mhm.
how often they are revived with Narcan, because anecdotally she's received reports that some people get Narcan 2 and 3 times a day, which they don't. I don't know if council member Lazada has ever seen somebody who's recovering from an overdose with Narcan, but they're not going to go right back and overdose again. They're not in that kind of condition where they could even put together the idea of seeking drugs right at that very moment. Um, all that being said, um, this also ties in with the mayor's office, Mayor Parker's office, decided to cut all funding for needle exchange programs in the city. So there is a lawsuit that was participated in by the city, Philadelphia, as well as like New York and Chicago and a lot of other big cities, that basically sued drug companies for creating and marketing drugs in such a way that they would attract people with addictive personalities and cause them to become addicted, um, causing the opioid crisis. So the lawsuit was settled recently. There is a lot of money coming from this opioid lawsuit settlement, and that money is ostensibly to be used to treat the opioid epidemic. Here's the difference between a neolib Democrat and a progressive. Neolib Democrats believe that we should be arresting people, getting them access to treatment and drug centers through the legal system by diverting them during trials, after multiple arrests, after sending them to prison, etc. Um, a progressive person and the progressive members of the city council believe that treatment should begin first. You save people from dying, and then and provide them access to the resources where they are, instead of institutionalizing them, and that will hopefully lead to better outcomes with more people getting treatment. Um, I don't know. Do you have any experience in this area with like drugs, drug addiction, homelessness, that kind of thing?
Yeah, not specifically, but I do, with what you're saying, I think that the proactive approach to providing treatment to people, to providing resources to people who need them, as opposed to criminalizing people who have found themselves in a situation, whether it is homelessness, whether it is drug addiction, nobody. chooses to be in that situation. Nobody, is homeless and or addicted to drugs because that was what they wanted
Well,
for their life.
the neo-lib argument is yes, they did choose that.
Right, which is absurd, if you do have any experience with just meeting people outside of like your office or your neighborhood, like just interacting with human beings, we all have tendencies and we all have, our own baggage, and to punish somebody for, maybe a choice that they did make, or maybe something, it doesn't matter, what led them to this situation. If we have the money and the resources to help people, why aren't we doing it? what what do we gain?
And so I was also looking into this. The money aspect of this is ridiculously small, especially compared to a city budget.
Mhm.
It's ridiculously small in that it's less than I pay my associate producer per year for her work. So it's less than a single person's salary. The needle exchange program that they're not going to be supporting any longer is $28,000 a year. You couldn't afford to live on that amount, and uh, in the size of our city's budget, that's actually kind of a rounding error. We've lost more money than that. um, we still have lost more money than that. The problem with small amounts of money like that getting lost is that it costs more to find those small amounts of money and where they got lost than it does to recover them. So,
Right.
then the benefit you would get by recovering them. Um, Always hilarious to me that like we paid a forensic accountant several $1 million to find a lost several $1 million. Anyway, yeah. So, yeah, this is the argument that's going on in city council right now, and you know, the mayor is making executive decisions where she can, purposely changing tack from the Kenny administration by pulling, support for needle exchange and any other program with which she says that, in her estimation, could contribute to somebody doing drugs. There are allies of this kind of technique on city council. Council member Lozada, of course, represents the Kensington area and was elected in part because of her promise to treat this more like a criminal matter than an addiction, or a healthcare matter. Um, Personally, I'm all for treating this like healthcare. I think these people are idiots, but I don't know how to communicate that any longer. I'm very lost on that. So anyway, I think it's important, everyone communicate these things in whatever method that they can, and like, this is a side rant from like the topics of today, but I thought it was important to bring up. We're gonna try and, on this show, interview people that are involved in the efforts to treat these things, and try and assess, like, honestly, where they got their ideas from, how effective their ideas are or have been in the past, and maybe figure out how we should be going about this. I don't know. I, much like you, agree with a proactive approach. Treat people first. Treat their homelessness first by giving them homes. Treat their drug addiction first by making sure that they stay alive, and healthy. Because the more your health and housing deteriorates, the harder it's going to be to recover from those. Anyway, sorry, that rant on the local section there. Nationally, companies have been cutting their DEI programs and teams back. specifically during Black History Month. This is crazy. It's an article by Fast Company. Fast Company is a reporting outlet involved mostly with business news. Um, and the reporter noticed that as March is starting, that many of her colleagues and friends in DEI recently lost their jobs. In 2020, so some statistics around this. In 2020, Huffington Post reported that 82% of white men and 81% of white women perceive themselves as strong allies to historically excluded colleagues. Um, we started this with, it seems like a good start. Um, and this is where a lot of DEI efforts came from. I know from Sewer Rat's production history that you guys are associated with a lot of getting minority voices on stage. Where did that drive come from for you guys for Sewer Rats? Where did that come from?
Yeah, well, in much the same way that you said, the reason that I got into theater and why a lot of us got into theater is to uplift voices, is to hear opinions from people who might not be the loudest voice in the room or the most, the whitest, most male voice in the room. Like, it's all well and good to produce the same white male playwrights over and over again, but there are other stories that need to be told, and they need an outlet, they need a platform. And so that was something that was really important to us, to sort of uplift these new voices and show that there are stories to be told, that are not the straight male experience, the straight white male experience. And it's just, it's exhausting. And to your point, when people said, 82% of people said that they are strong advocates for their marginalized colleagues. It's all well and good to wear the button, but what are you actually doing? What are the actionable steps that you're taking?
Yeah, that's always the question. Like, what are you actually doing?
Right.
Um, recent Pew Research data indicates that 56% of Americans support DEI efforts, compared to the 81% that consider themselves allies. Um,
Right.
I I don't know. I would think that an ally would be supportive of DEI. That's a wide difference there. That's like some 35% difference in like, so half of the people that say that they're allies don't support DEI, um,
Yeah, that's
while a Marist national poll highlights that more than 80% of respondents believe diversity encompassing race, ethnicity, and religion strengthens our nation. Um, I'm lost here. I don't know. I again, maybe this is the neo-lib versus progressive argument.
I
Um,
feel like these polls need to be done in like short answer format as opposed to just multiple choice.
well, then
Not just
how do you collect
oh,
the data? I guess would be the problem. How do you summarize it? Maybe that's a good use of AI. Maybe you could train the AI model on everybody's short form answer, and then it could spit out kind of like an amalgamation of everybody's short form answer. Um, but yeah, yeah. So I mean, like, this is a fascinating article. I've posted, Meg's posted the link on the screen there and in the chats. Please check it out. It's a little bit about why DEI efforts have been being cut back, not only from a like a perspective of public sympathy and public policy, but also from the perspective of legal and business needs. Um, I think it's a fascinating subject. I, of course, am a big proponent of DEI. I think that diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts are important. I mean, if nothing else, just at least, every once in a while go, yeah, there is and has always historically been a problem with diversity, equity, inclusion. It includes minority voices of all descriptions, not only black and brown people, but women, people who are identify with different genders and different uh, uh, everything. Like they're people are minorities. The majority of people are some sort of minority. The minority of people are some general description of white male, Europeanness. Um, that's not the majority of people. So yeah, DEI is important because there's no time at which this vocal and well supported minority should be making the rules for everyone without the voices of everyone involved. Um, I guess I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. Um,
Well,
Go ahead.
it's fascinating too when you think about the fact that this country was based on a document which did not consider most people today in the country today people. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So many people did not have a voice in creating that document and did not have a voice in shaping what this country
But I
has
think
become.
one of the fascinating things about like the American experiment is has been that it the document intentionally left room to expand, and we did actually take advantage of that. We took advantage of it, and now you have a bunch of people who are originalists or want to go back to make America great again, and it all you're talking about is rolling back all the progress that we've made in the last 100 250 250 years.
Mhm.
um how is I don't understand. I don't know. I don't get people sometimes. I think I'm. Yeah. um. Just going back to Perils of Flowerbed. I think there are some mirrors for this. In that narrative. Like, what would you say a modern audience, concerned with these kind of things, can find in the narrative that might encourage them, or might make them think about these things?
Yeah, there are varying degrees of, good and evil to each character, and there are varying degrees of choices that they make that are sometimes entirely selfish and sometimes choices that affect other people. And I think one of the things that is interesting is you see the sort of the consequences of those selfish choices, and kind of how there's sort of a mirror effect of when you're being selfish and when you're including others in your decision making. And so I think that's sort of interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. What have you learned any lessons from directing this? Like that has the script brought anything to mind for you? Like anything that or refocused perhaps lessons that you've learned in the past?
Yeah, I think a lot of the work that I am drawn to has to do with showing that making choices through empathy is generally the best way um, to achieve good for everyone, and leading with that empathy and leading with that desire to understand other people and that desire to connect with other people, especially those who are different from you or who are experiencing things that you haven't experienced. And so I think this piece is a really good example of that, where these characters are deeply affected by each other's emotions and each other's choices. And so I think the choice to lead with empathy is always sort of leads to the best outcome.
Very true. I think that yeah, leading with empathy, also considering the voices that you perhaps kind of gloss over, and being aware that you're like being proactively aware to consider those voices is important. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. Um, International news, national, however you want to consider it. Netflix is an international company, so we'll call it international news. They are building a mega studio in New Jersey. It is going into a former army base in Monmouth County. Um, and it's received approvals and support from uh, the governor's office and the approval from a local board in New Jersey. New Jersey's municipal government and local governments are organized slightly differently than Philadelphia, so it's not like every place has a city council or something like that. A lot of them are boards, and the local board supports it. They still have to go through a bunch of hoops in order to approve their building plans, and there's a little bit of pushback from locals about extra traffic and extra infrastructure use and that sort of thing. All fair. I think any sort of expansion or project like this needs to consider the already existing local use. But obviously, this is going to be a boon to all locals, whether or not they realize it. It's going to create a large campus of lots of people nearby who are going to look for entertainment and food and other things on a daily basis. Um, Always been one of my big arguments with supporting the arts. At any rate, I wanted to bring this up and look at it. Uh, I don't know. I think this is a good thing. What do you think? Having an international production house basically next door to us seems like a good thing to me. I don't know.
I agree. I think it seems like a good thing, for that boost in the economy, and maybe it brings jobs. Maybe I'm not sure how that kind of works, but maybe it does, and maybe it doesn't. I don't. I think expanding the arts and bringing arts operations to new places is a positive. And does it, maybe connect us more with New York or with LA, you know what I mean? Does it sort of create sort of an interdependence between locations? I think it's a positive.
I think so too. I'm looking forward to it. I don't think that, we'll suddenly see a big draw from Philadelphia arts, of talent and whatever, but I think it does provide a bit of a more opportunity for those that don't necessarily want to move to New York to pursue their art. And, Monmouth County isn't exactly as far as New York, but it's also, a bit of travel. So those that want to participate will need to be able to travel there or move. But I think it'll be somewhat of a draw of extra talent from both nationally and internationally into the local area. A lot of times projects in say LA or New York get done just because those people happen to be there.
Mhm.
They just happen to be there for another project, and so they can participate in the art house thing that is filming next door without having to travel there specifically for that. And I find that possibly a good impact of this, at least for the arts here. Um, I think it overall be a good thing. Netflix has committed 903 million for the overall project, including the 55 million bid to acquire the parcel of land and 848 million in capital investments. That's building new buildings, bringing in new equipment, that kind of thing. Um, it's a really small number, to be quite honest, for a campus this size. It's a huge campus. I assume they're going to be reusing a number of buildings and just fixing the facades of them and or reskinning them. I just it's it's still going to bring a lot of business. It's just $100 million or excuse me, $900 million is not quite the huge number that some people would think it is, but is for a project this size. You can go through that really quick. um, as anybody who's run a budget for a theater company knows. Uh, um, Also, in national news, I wanted to talk about, and it didn't make it to, for some reason, it didn't make it to my highlights. Um, Fetterman and Kelci pulling their support for funding of the William Way Center. Um, there's an article on ABC 27, that's a Harrisburg channel, talking about this pull of support. And it's interesting because the title of the article is that Kelci and Fetterman explain their decision to pull funding for it. And if you read the article, it's not really so much of an explanation as just kind of statements. Um, they do allude to what the reasoning is, sort of. Uh, Marianne Lynn, Mary Reed Lynn, a spokesperson for Kelci, released a statement to ABC 27. Senator Kelci has been a leader in the and ally in the fight for protection of LGBTQ rights in the U.S. Senate and will continue to support the LGBTQ community in the Commonwealth. He believes that consenting adults have the right to do whatever they want in their free time, but these types of appropriations projects warrant the highest level of scrutiny on behalf of taxpayers. Senator Kelci withdrew his request for federal funding when new information about the third-party use of the facility emerged. For those that don't know what that says, I'll translate it real quick. Um, I'm an ally to the LGBTQ community, but I think that people have the right to do what they want, but I don't think that they have the right to spend government money to put on theater pieces in the William Way Center.
Yeah, it's
I hate to tell you, Senator Kelci, but that's directly a violation of the First Amendment. So like the First Amendment. Let's just read real quick the First Amendment uh, to the amendment. I didn't look this up ahead of time.
quick refresher.
First Amendment to the United States Constitution. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and petition the government and to petition the government for redress of grievances. Again, I'm no legal expert, but I would say that yanking the funding that you promised a nonprofit org like the William Way Center uh, because of quote third party use of the facility is violating the freedom of I'll accept your perspective on this as an artist.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think it goes back to yeah, I'm an ally, I'm a supporter. It's just that I'm not going to actually do anything to help. And in fact, I'm going to take resources away, which is just fascinating.
Yeah. I'm quite lost. Fetterman's office also released the following statement on Wednesday afternoon. This was more of a public statement. It wasn't directly to the ABC affiliate, but was a general public statement on the yanking of the bill. Quote, the William Way LGBT Community Center, they didn't include the Q or the plus, has been doing critical work in Philadelphia for decades. No shit, we knew that already. I don't believe that we should penalize this center based on events that are entirely legal among consenting adults. I have no problem with what consenting adults do in their private time. Unfortunately, at the 11th hour, my staff was made aware that funding for William Way, which was in the bill because I championed it, would not pass the fiscal year 24 appropriations process. The choice was either to pull it or watch it get stripped out, attacked by Republicans, and ultimately killed. This is not the end of this fight, and I'm going to fight for William Way to secure their funding in the fiscal year 25 appropriations process. I'm new here, but I wasn't aware that democratic values and priorities are dictated by libs of TikTok. For those that don't know, libs of TikTok is a counterintuitive title for a TikTok, a YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, and multiple other channel outlet that is entirely Christo-fascist in nature. They are anti-LGBTQ, anti-trans, anti-gay, anti-atheist, anti-mixed race people like me. Yeah, they don't like any of us. At any rate, Libs of TikTok apparently did some work to bring up the inclusion of this funding in the fiscal year 24 appropriations bill that is in the House, the state House, and the the Harrisburg reps would use their numerical advantage in the appropriations committee to essentially stall the entirety of the fiscal year 24 appropriations bill in order to use this as their leverage to stall it. Political games, but at any rate, that means that the problem I have with this statement is the two sentences that make up over half that make up about half of what he said about consenting adults. He repeated consenting adults twice in this statement. This has nothing to do with consenting adults, nor does it have anything to do with anything. Speech is entirely legal. You are free to put on a performance, and people are free to not attend it. That's the big part. But there's lots of people that don't watch this show. I mean, you're free to not attend the show, and the state should still fund those shows when they promise to fund them, or fund the venues where those shows are held when they promise to fund them. Yanking of funding, especially for a small nonprofit, is akin to trying to kill that nonprofit because they've already probably spent that money. I don't know how else to say it. I don't know if Sewer Rats has ever had funding yanked from it, but I have. Light Thief Productions has. Yeah.
Yeah, we've never had that happen, but I can see where that would be a problem when you've pledged to do something, when you've pledged to offer funding for something, and then it gets pulled. What are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to do to the people that you've promised things to, that you have already made agreements to? It's just it's a whole game.
The William Way Center released a statement on Wednesday, uh, stating that they were disappointed in the loss of support for federal funding, and they added that these extremists falsely stated that sexual behavior is allowed in rental programs of the center, which is inaccurate and against the center's code of conduct. They added the center will continue to be a safe haven for a broad range of hundreds of community groups who rent from us, including those that provide a space for sexual health promotion, community building, and education. The William Way LGBT Community Center stands firmly against discrimination and will work with our elected officials to ensure the support for our center and other LGBTQ institutions across the nation is restored. So yeah, I mean, they're right, and they should have gone further with this statement. I say that I think that they should have brought up the illegality of what is being done here. I think that it's past time that we held our elected officials to their promises, and we'll talk more about this in the coming weeks, especially as regards to Mayor Parker's yanking of support for drug treatment programs, homeless diversion programs, and other things that are just entirely. I don't think enough people realize that enough people in government realize that they could face jail time for some of the decisions that they make. And I think that this push to insulate, you know, people in government from legal action is a part of that, and also part and parcel of why we need to start, reminding these people that they work for us. I don't know. Again, I could be crazy. Any last thoughts? I'm going to wrap up today's show. Any last thoughts, Kelci? Things that you want to get out there? Where and when can people see the show? And what does it cost? And that kind of thing.
Yeah. So Perils of the Flowerbed is one night only, April 6th at 7:30 at the CEC Arts Center at 3400 Lancaster Avenue. It is pay what you can, pay what you decide. So, we just want everybody to come join us in a cool space and see a cool production. We would love for you to be there.
Awesome. Thank you for your insights today. And I'm gonna go to a one up of me and outro the show. Feel free to hang out in the chat if you want to talk a little bit more, and I hope to see you again on another episode.
Absolutely, that'd be great. Thank you, James.
Thank you. Thank you to our listeners for joining us. Those who watch the show every week, those who watch it in rerun. I keep having to remind people that you can watch this in rerun as soon as as we go off live. It's available in streaming immediately. As soon as we stop live streaming, you can start watching it right afterwards if you like. And so I'm just going to remind folks of that right now. Please watch the show in rerun if you can't watch it live. I started doing this show because of the pandemic, because I just wanted people to be able to realize that artists still exist, even though like our main job is to bring large numbers of people together in small spaces. We still exist, and we still try to have an impact on the community, even if we aren't able to do that. We're getting to the space where we are able to bring large numbers of people together in small spaces to experience things. And we want to bring the most people together to experience the most relevant things to them, whether they realize it's relevant to them or not. Oftentimes, that includes exploring things like sexuality and diversity. Um, Especially if those positions are underrepresented in the population. So you might see us talking about things that pique your interest or that that you feel maybe aren't worth your time. But they are. They are always worth your time. Um, from local actions affecting the LGBTQ plus community to the broader impacts of corporate and entertainment industry decisions, it's clear that our collective engagement and advocacy can drive meaningful change. Let's keep the conversation going and continue to support each other in breaking barriers and building a more inclusive future. Um, I'd like to thank you again for watching. I'll see you next week on another coffee break chat. Enjoy the rest of your week, everybody.